Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Neurologic Podcast. I'm your co-host, Justin George.
And I'm Abe Marietta. Thank you so much for listening. We've got a show for you today, of course.
That's right, we definitely have a show for you today. So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about autism awareness since it's Autism Awareness Month is coming up. We are going to be talking about accepting accommodations and understanding support. And finally, we're going to be wrapping up the podcast by talking about current events. And boy, do we have a lot of current events,
Yes,
don't we?
we do, and I can't wait to get to those for sure.
Same here. It's going to be exciting. So, of course, we're very blessed and happy to do this. And as always, we appreciate our listeners. So let's get right into it. So, of course, you know the theme of the Neurologic Podcast. We are two best friends who happen to be wired with autism and ADHD. Those who also know me say that I have a tendency to write books in emails, don't I, Aiden?
Yes. Why, yes, that is true.
It is true. So we really wanted to talk about a little bit more of our story, as well as what accommodations look like, and we wanted to, of course, tie it into faith and our beliefs, and then wrap up with the current events, and some of it actually does relate to this as well. So it's interesting because we both have autism and ADHD.
That is true.
And I was diagnosed. We both were diagnosed at a young age.
That is also true.
And I will be honest, I was I think we both, what do you say? We were both very resistant.
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit or a lot at times.
It depends on who you ask.
That's right. So one of the things too, and kind of jumping forward to my life before I really had just the total acceptance of it, was because it had either gotten politicized. You know, many know that we've maybe mentioned the hope concept on occasion.
Yeah.
But we saw this too from, again, we saw this from different angles where there was denigration of people with autism, or, maybe there were even political figures who, rather than taking the time to understand and do legitimate research, were instead, not interested in that.
And said they didn't want to do it because it wasn't something, and, I won't name names.
I won't name names.
They know who
either.
they are.
That's right. And so we just wanted to take a peaceful stand because we feel that this all inextricably goes back to faith, and it goes back to who we are. And, what would you say? Like, we look at each other as best friends first and foremost.
Yes, absolutely.
But we've become not afraid to talk about it. Not just on the podcast, but even off the air, and to be able to introspect.
Absolutely. It's, it's not always easy, but I think it's gotten easier, so to speak, as we've gone on and done so.
It has. It's gotten easier. And so one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to just talk about, what exactly it is. And again, it's a spectrum. Not everybody's the same.
All right.
Now Aiden and I do have a lot in common. We like cool tech, politics.
Yes.
I would say a super hyper focus on politics.
Again, trying to fix things up and getting some bad folks out.
That's right. But I think even just beyond just the involvement, I mean, it's critical and it's important. We do stuff as a team.
We do.
But I think also getting involved in, like even just in our, like advocacy and sort of, it obviously deals with government involvement. But I think also just like that cool focus that Ada and I have, we love, looking at what goes on in 50 states. And, yesterday we were walking around just during some downtime, and we were talking and just what we were doing. We're citing just, this is what's going on in this state. And what is your, it comes natural to us.
A lot of stuff that comes natural to us to go into, to just shout out on the streets if we have to.
It does. So one of the things we wanted to bring to you was just what exactly autism is. And it is a spectrum, like I said. I mean, we happen to have a lot in common, and I think that's one of the things that goes into advocacy. So this is from the Autism Society of Indiana, and it says that there are many differences between a medical diagnosis and an educational determination or school evaluation of a disability. A medical diagnosis is made by a physician based on an assessment of symptoms and diagnostic tests. A medical diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, for instance, is most frequently made by a physician according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, DSM-5, of the American Psychological Association 2013. This manual guides physicians in diagnosing autism spectrum disorder according to a specific number of symptoms, and then there's a thing where it says see the diagnostic classification.
Right. So, and it goes on. An educational determination, in contrast, is made by a multidisciplinary evaluation team comprised of various school professionals. The evaluation results are reviewed by a team of qualified professionals and the parents to determine whether a student qualifies for special education-related services under the Individuals with Disabilities Act, IDEA, Hawkins 2009.
And so, folks, what we're talking about here is the actual diagnosis, and I think we both think it's important to talk about that because oftentimes and this is the case with our journeys, that that diagnosis is why we're still reaching our God-given potential. Because we know what we have it, we're not avoiding it. And I would say this. I mean, both of us, I feel like we we really helped each other with not avoiding this, because it's not that, we have autism, we have to do, I mean, again, it's a spectrum, but realizing that we are wired differently, and that's okay.
Absolutely, and that that's not always easy to do, but it takes work. It's always a work in progress.
Exactly. So here's now, it talks about, again, this is from the Autism Society of Indiana here in our great state. And it says there is no single cause for autism, but it is generally accepted that it is caused by abnormalities in brain structure or function. Brain scans show difference in the shape and structure of the brain in children with autism versus in neurotypical children. Researchers are investigating a number of theories, including the links among genetics, and it goes on medical problems, just things that you may inherit. And again, this is going to be different based on everybody's metabolism.
Absolutely. My metabolism happens to be very fast, so
it is.
I got no issues there.
Faster than mine too, but I say that in a good way.
Of course. In many families, there appears to be a pattern of ASD or related disabilities, further supporting the theory that the disorder has a genetic basis. While no one gene has been identified as causing it, researchers are searching for irregular segments of genetic code that children with autism may have inherited. It also appears that some children are born with a susceptibility to ASD, but researchers have not identified a single trigger that causes it to develop.
And I think that's important too. And when you see current events, again, not to politicize this, but when you see, even at the national level, that folks in Congress, and again, we have, Thomas Massey, we've mentioned him. We've got
some great guys in our delegation. I mentioned Marlon Stutzman. Shout out to him if he happens to, you listen to this, Congressman
Victoria
Stutzman. We appreciate
Spartz.
you, Victoria Spartz. And a few others, I would say that.
That's right.
In our delegation.
Absolutely. And so what we're talking about here is we're talking about that, we appreciate those in our delegation that have taken the time to understand our personal journey together, but also have taken the time to go to DC and to try to make things better for others without, dare I say, without maybe, without trying to politicize it. I mean, it's Congress, it's DC, enough said,
right?
No,
it's like it's DC. What do you think it's going to be?
Exactly. And then one other thing we wanted to point out, too, from this website is that, there's talks about just the different, medical things, genetics. So, for us, I think it's important, to do legitimate research.
Absolutely.
But not to, what would you say, not to denigrate,
not
as
to
we've
do
seen.
whatever weird pseudoscience people are looking up.
Exactly. So it's important to learn more about, ourselves, but also people like us, and realize that it's not just the diagnosis, I think for me, and I'll ask you the same question, it's not like, I have to run up to everybody and say, hey, my name is Justin, and by the way, I have autism.
No, you don't gotta do that.
You don't have to do that, because that's not...
I mean, unless usually I only bring it up with somebody else if somebody asks sort of my experience with it, and I think by that point that's where it's appropriate to point something out there, and I don't think that, I think that's where you can take that conversation to that point.
Absolutely, and that's a good point that you just made, Aiden, about taking the conversation. And oftentimes it's because it comes up on a need-to-know basis, or as we're doing with the podcast, obviously we'll be talking about a lot. But in my personal life, I find that sometimes, and I think the same thing for you, sometimes that internal self-awareness is why, we do really well, in public and understanding. Now, sometimes, we'll have to process things, or if there's something that's outside of our control, for example. And I think we've gotten really good at even helping each other with understanding, whatever that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is, I think there's always a way to, try to do that in the right way. I would also point out, and I don't know if this maybe this is related, but another listener, I guess I could say another listener of
That's right.
our show. Would you like to point this out by
That's
any chance?
That's right. So Susan Beckwith, we've talked about her and our Lieutenant
Our
Governor.
second lady.
That's right, and our Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith, and she, is fantastic, and she wrote something on her blog, Belle of the Midwest. If you haven't seen it yet, and
give it a check. You'll
yes,
like it. You'll really love it.
And she actually did a whole blog post called Disability Awareness Etiquette, which I think we both think is fantastic.
Absolutely. So if you get a chance, so I won't read all of it because we want to make sure we get to everything. But I will say, if anybody has, but she wrote an entire suggestion, basically on different advice on how to not make assumptions, remember the remember the individual. Those are her two highlights on that. So definitely give it a read. It's really good.
Absolutely, it definitely is really good, and it talks about like Aiden just pointed out from our second lady site, not mentioning not making assumptions, which I think is important, and the assumptions can be any different way, and so I just think this is something that really has especially as we continue to get closer to April, which is Autism Awareness Month. I think that understanding the way that we look at it is it's just part of who we are.
Yeah.
We're 100% made in the image and likeness of God, but it's not gonna. It's okay. Like when you have that full acceptance point, that I think for me, and we're gonna get into this when we talk about accommodations and different things,
mm-hmm. that
once you start to get rid of the stigma or just understanding that it's a spectrum. So Aiden and I. You mentioned your metabolism is a little faster than mine, and
yes,
maybe somewhat faster. I'll admit that, but it's also okay that we have common interests. We both we love the podcast, radio stuff, communications, politics, media stuff, the things that make us tick.
That's right, absolutely.
So for that, it's just really having that common interest is also something that's really cool about us.
Definitely.
And I think that's something that we really just, clicked over, and just, I think our stories, it's to be able to give each other the grace and the understanding, but at the same time, to help each other grow has been one of the most rewarding parts
Certainly.
of our best friendship for life.
That's right, absolutely. So, I think, so that's really the gist of it. And also then there's ADHD, when there's something here from the Cleveland Clinic that kind of talks a little bit about it. And, basically kind of tells you what it is: attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, where it affects how the brain works. It doesn't mean that you lack attention, as the Cleveland Clinic says. It just means that it's a little harder to control your attention at certain tasks, but it allows you to get into the zone and hyper focus on things you really enjoy. Well, certainly we can relate to that.
Yeah, so that's actually something we can definitely relate to, because
mm-hmm.
I think that the hyper focus, is something that, getting in the zone, folks, one of the things that's exciting about Aiden and I and our friendship is that we really have, again, I mentioned the common interest. So politics, watching debate clips is something that we're,
yep.
But having hyper focus can be good. Now, story for you all. So when I was really little, I had to touch this stop sign in my neighborhood street. Ada knows this story already. It's mm-hmm. funny, but I'll tell it for our listeners. And this is when I was around 2.5, 3, maybe 3.5 as well. And I just had to touch the stop sign for whatever reason. I was obsessed with stop signs, like vehemently obsessed with it. And so you see these kind of things. Was obsessed in elementary school with the teachers, the two-way radio system that the teachers and the principal and everybody had, and the bus radio system. And so that culminated in me getting a ham radio license, which it's a hobby, but also I volunteered with some of the things. And, with ham radio, I mainly do like the local communications. All around the world communications are interesting. And that's just one of many things. And then when you take a look at the general interest of communications and radio, and like Ada and I have, common interests like the broadcasting and podcast and all this stuff.
That's right.
It's just so fascinating to us that we could spend hours and hours. What would you say about that?
I would say that's definitely true. I think you summed it up really well. So. Yeah.
And I think this is also from the Cleveland Clinic. There's difference in the ADHD types, and according again, this is from my.clevelandclinic.org that there are the there's also the combined presentation, and it says this is the most common type of ADHD, and it's what most people associate with the condition. So inattentive symptoms and hyperactive impulsive symptoms. Yes, that speaks to me, doesn't
Yes.
it? And I think that, but we, it's interesting to look at the crossover between autism and ADHD in the sense of because we have both, we also recognize like, hey, we have this hyper focus, or there's something that's like growing this podcast, or thinking about like Aiden, you mentioned like getting the right, being passionate about getting the right people elected. The way it works in my head, and probably for you as well,
Yes.
is that it's just something like I think about the podcast, or like building it up, and I think about like we mentioned Kentucky, and working across state lines, like we talked about making the roads safer, and I think that that's something that rather than because yeah, there's many problems, but we also tend to focus on the solutions.
That's right.
So, folks, before we get into the next segment, we talked about before Hope Florida and Hope Rising. We wanted to bring some more statistics, and like I said, we'll be getting into that. But what to do now? Autism Awareness Month is coming up. We're going to be sharing our story. We've even reached out to some the Autism Society, reached out to been reaching out to some media, and even just folks in the political realm to share our journey and hopefully benefit others.
That's right.
So what would be your best advice to whether it's people like us who have autism and or ADHD, or just any type of disability? What would be your advice, not just for Autism Awareness Month, but for advocacy and that self-awareness?
Yeah, I think there's plenty of things that can be done. I think that all you got to do is try to always be aware. That's really all you got to do. But I guess in advocacy, don't hesitate to fight for yourself if you gotta do so. But I say so in the most respectful way possible. Just make your case. Making your case is often the strongest way to do it.
That's right. And I think that's actually a really key point for our listeners, is making the case. I think that would be, if there's one takeaway, I think it would be that.
Yes.
And when you make the case for that, this gets into our next segment, talking about accommodations, talking about when you access supports. This goes back into the hope concept. This goes back into, advocating when you go through whatever level of support that you need, so that you can reach your God-given potential, and so that you are getting the right supports and you're not getting too little or too much, basically.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And now segment 2, we'll be talking about the some things about college and part of that life. So stay tuned for that. All right, now for segment 2, and this one has to do with sort of a college experience. So it's sort of about like how the accommodations are used, and I've made use of them in school, in high school, and I think even a little before that.
So have I. So Aiden and I are. So first of all, I had a bachelor's degree in communication. I earned that online, after earning an associate degree in criminal justice online before that. And Aiden is going for the same communication degree, except the in-person version. So a little different because it's in class, but the same degree. And so we think this is really important to bring this, because many times, and this goes back to certain things for me, even though I took online classes, I will share that I do not do well with tests, in the sense of having like the time tests.
Oh yeah, I don't like those either.
So I think that there's some, speaking of hope and inspiration that we can give our listeners. Maybe you have autism like us, or maybe you know somebody, or maybe you have, whatever it is, you have an accommodation. And what we're talking about here is college accommodations, but this really applies to all aspects of life.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not always easy to kind of, at least for us, it wasn't easy to kind of accept them. In fact, we wanted to try. I know from my end, sometimes I wanted to not have them until the time tests started coming in.
That's right. And so I think that was the same way for me, that I didn't really know what it was originally. It's not that I didn't know what accommodations were, but having done some advocacy things growing up, and was youth leader for a state project to advocate for people with disabilities, I still was very resistant, and I feel like I just things tended to move fast. For me, I, and Ada mentioned the time task. That was something, but also just I think that and this goes specifically into college, but even for example, high school, like the test booklets, for example. I know some folks have trouble with that, and
Yeah.
so there's accommodations. But why don't we talk a little bit about what's worked for you? And again, it's going to be maybe different for others, maybe the same. That's okay. But
Yeah.
what things worked for you to help you specifically with the focus
Yeah.
in
So
college?
probably the extended time on the tests. Kind of, they have a sort of. I'm not going to say any specific locations to be on the safe side, but they had the library a testing lab, so to speak. So I can't say I can complain about that because it was nice and quiet, and the library itself is very quiet. So afterwards, if it was a while before I had any classes, and I had time to kind of relax after having to take a test, because usually I timed it very early in the morning, then it just gave me a minute to kind of relax and unwind, so to speak.
That's actually a key aspect too for me. Now, my classes were online for college, so I didn't necessarily have the same the in-person environment that you did. But something Aiden pointed out to me, that just the focus, like being able to really get to be able to get in the zone, and we talk about hyper focus with things with interest, but I think, but doing something like a test, even if it's a subject matter that's important, the
Mm-hmm.
test itself can be something that can be. What would you say from your experience with the test? It would be not that you would get nervous, but what would be just, would you say anticipation?
Yes, I would say so.
I think that was the same for me. Like I'd have it hanging over my head. And one of the things too, and you pointed this out before we started recording, that sometimes like just tell our listeners more about like the way like how like because you and I have a good processing power with our brain, so to speak. I mean, we're that's not to brag or anything, but we really sometimes it can take a while to absorb it. So why don't you tell our listeners, and then I'll introspect as well. What is that like for you specifically, like on the test? And again, you're almost done with college, and proud of you, and I'm done with it. And I think also to the environment and some of this goes back to the morality. Where it's just, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you've done a good job,
Yeah.
but not worrying so much about what the student body, but just you're there to learn and take what's good, the good communication skills,
Yeah.
the professional things that allow us to do things like this. What would you say would be some of the things that you would have struggled with without accommodations for test or otherwise?
Yeah, without the accommodations, it's like you're rushing. For me, it was. I was rushing, and you wasn't sure what to. And like, oh, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. But it's better not to rush on those.
And that's a good point. It's better not to rush, because I think for me that was something too, where even in the online environment for my version of the communications degree, that I would have everything on my mind but the test in front of me. What about you?
Absolutely, I agree.
So see, that's where the accommodations. I think it's also important, and we have both accepted that. Now, another accommodation, we've shared our story. This kind of is more of a general theme. This is not just about college, but beyond college, the concept of accommodations that helps us both, like keeping helping each other with reminders,
Mm-hmm.
and even our living situation. We've talked about we're going to be getting into the complex
We
together,
are.
and being able to keep each other on track with and even using technology to help is you can think of as an accommodation. So it's not just for college. So maybe folks, you're listening, and maybe you're not in college, or maybe whatever your situation is, that putting it into practice, it's helped us go closer and best friendship,
That's right. It has.
and also simultaneously advocate for others. And accommodations translate, like I said, it translates into us supporting each other when we're going to be living together, and that's the whole reason for our divine intervention story.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say, well said on that.
And what would be the, like, for listeners out there, especially like for us, obviously we're going to be living in
Mm-hmm.
together in the complex. for folks that maybe they're, two best friends like us with autism. Maybe they have a family member, or maybe it's any type of disability. What would be your number one advice to somebody who, like us, we accept it, and it's based on happiness, especially for God's plan with us. But what would be your number one advice for folks in terms of like that acceptance point, and then I guess understanding it?
That's a good question. I'd say, try to learn more about yourself. Think about, try to learn, experiment, see what makes you, what interests you, what makes you, what brings you a lot of passion. I'd say go, and if it works out for you, go for it.
Definitely, and that's what I think, that if it works out for you, go for it, and that's something that's just like we've done. So we're going to talk a little bit more about strategies, and we're even going to weave this back into how we've talked about the hope concept when it comes to, engaging the government and elected officials in terms of implementing, things for people of all ages. Particularly we've talked a lot about Hope Florida with Ron and Casey DeSantis, and Hope Rising out in Oklahoma, and they've gone national. So one of the things, they have a Hope Score worksheet that was pretty cool, and they were doing some Hope Navigator training. So I think it's important because you want to get to the support systems, and this is another thing we've talked about. The support systems, yes, you can you tailor it to the person, but at the same time, don't isolate them as just like, oh, this is like, don't hyper individualize it to the point where it doesn't take, like, for example, we happen to have the same interests. Now, we would all be boring if we were 100% the same.
Yes.
But on the flip side, there is nothing wrong with having common interests, or take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Folks that are helping, those on the spectrum, like Aiden and I, we do well. We work as a team because it's fun. But we get, we have a lot of downtime. But when we do stuff, it makes it makes a lot of it's that's where I say we thrive.
Yeah, I'd say so too, and I think that we've noticed that. That's the kind of strategies we've used, and that's the kind of strategies we would suggest. But also, we would like to, I guess, our question to you, if you're listening, would be, what would be your own strategies? We'd be very interested. So I think that's going to do it for this second segment. When we come back, we're going to go into current events, and this one will be a little lighter, a little. I wouldn't say controversial, but a little spirited, I would imagine.
That's right.
Well, we'll have to see, so stay tuned. All right, now for our third and final segment, current events. Oh, this is going to be fun, isn't it? And definitely not controversial.
It's not controversial at all.
Depending on who you ask, it is.
In our minds, it's what goes on every day.
Dennis, so a friend and a support and a close ally of Thomas Massey is
Shannon Deniston,
and he's got events coming up. If you're in the Kentucky area, right in the Commonwealth, in the 74th district, he's hosting events. He's running. I think he's got the Massey seal of approval.
Well, it's right, because Saturday, April 4th, 2026, from 12 o'clock p.m. to 1:30 p.m. in Montgomery County, Kentucky. Location is to be determined, and it'll be on his website, denistonforkentucky.com. And there is we're looking at the picture here, to end, there's a little caption that says to end property tax, which we agree with.
Yeah, abolish it once and for all. In fact, I know somebody else who's been saying we need to abolish it after he called on the veto of the failed reform. That was our lieutenant governor said veto the thing, and then when it wasn't vetoed, he's gone even further and has said property tax is theft, abolish it.
Yes.
No reform, abolish. I agree.
I agree, because property tax reform is going to be like completely, because you hear the politicians go, property tax reform. Well, no, you don't reform something that's, as our Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith said, is immoral.
You destroy it.
Yeah, that's right. And also,
and as James Fishback has said, you don't reform. When you hear politicians say property tax reform, that means they're gonna screw you. They usually don't do it. The last time it was ever truly reformed was when Governor Daniels was in office. And keep in mind, 4 of those years he had a divided General Assembly that he had to deal with. And again, he dealt with Pat Bauer.
Yes, and again, that's why we're saying here in Indiana we need to end property tax. Also, no tolls on Interstate 70, like we talked about.
That's right. And maybe we need to go. Well, maybe as somebody in particular said, I guess we need to go stick our heads in the sand because we don't have tolling as an option.
you're sticking your head in the sand if you don't have tolling as an option.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it at that.
We will leave it at that, but we'll just say it was comments directed at a friend of ours, and we were not happy with that.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go stick our heads in the sand afterwards.
That's right. We're gonna go directly to sand. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Right.
Well, that's for politicians. That's usually for politicians like Bob Menendez who go to jail.
Oh yeah,
Bob.
Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna say because New Jersey has had a lot of
corruption.
Yes, a lot of corruption. I know, and if you look at, and it goes on the Pennsylvania side too, and you look at
Philadelphia.
Well, and the you know they call them the freeholders up there with they don't call them the board of supervisors like Virginia, California do.
Or you don't, and you don't even have that kind of weird where our structure here, like the Tennessee structure, where it's a county council and a county mayor, or even here in Indiana, where you have an executive branch as 3 county commissioners, three executives,
which is cool,
which I do like. I think it gives like sort of a balance. And a county council. You don't have that. No, you have a board of freeholders. Okay, they're called the freeholders or the board of supervisors, like they have in Arizona and California and Virginia.
The board of supervisors. Well,
to make it sound so serious, but you might as well call it something else.
Well, and let's talk about this too. Proposition 187 from California, because you really like that.
Yes, it was to deal with immigration enforcement and deny state services, saying, look, this is the way it works. You got to be a citizen to access state services, and if you're not, you don't. But I also like other things. Prop 13, what was held in the hands of the voters, and Howard Jarvis, which capped property taxes in California.
Out of all places.
Yeah. Well, this was the late 70s.
It was, of course, the 70s. We're talking decades ago, and but that's why when you look at this and what's going on in Kentucky. I mean, Thomas Massey, kudos to him for building up a good bench there in the state senate and the state house.
Those Laurel Loomer acolytes that are trying to stalk him.
The Dilly meme team, all these kooks and creeps, and yeah.
I love how he told the one guy that his voice.
Charles Downs.
Yeah, Charles Downs, like with the voice that he tells him where he's going to change his party affiliation. He goes, "Huh, I thought you knew." And he tells him, "I vote with Republicans 91% of the time." And he just gave it to the candidate. And how about the other time where he's like, "Your voice is cracking. Your voice is cracking. I think the puberty blockers are wearing off."
Or here's one of my favorite.
Massey's words, not mine.
Yeah, Massey's words. Now, I have to do an impression of Trump, the phone call on March 27th, 2020. I just have to do it. I told Aiden before we recorded.
Massey tells this story a lot. Because this has to do, but we didn't talk about the dinner, but this has
I can't let it go. I have to do it.
Everything to do with what we're pointing out. And
yes. He goes, he talks about how he was on the floor of the house, let it go to voicemail several times. And
he couldn't leave the floor of the house because nobody else would do it. They were like,
no, not me.
Not me.
And it's so funny. And here,
well, Ken Buck was one of the few that helped.
And we saw him afterwards.
And good on Ken Buck.
Because he was also after, and there's a funny quote too, but Trump comes online, he goes, "I'm coming at you like you've never seen. Never in your life before have you seen the way in which I will come at you. I'm more popular than you in Kentucky, and you know it. I'm going to back your primary opponent, and you're going to lose." And then he continues, and he goes, "No, this is the second time they've done something like this. And they've talked me out of it before, but not this time. You're gonna lose." And then he hangs up the phone.
Yep.
And then Massey goes, he just started realizing it's the same guy. I've done this 8 times.
But he actually did it. He thought it was the second time, but he had actually done it like 8 times. And he just started realizing it. The only other time he knew about it was with war with Iran after he vaporized Soleimani.
When he said the Democrats were trying to vaporize, they were talking, and there was talking about
war. And then he was going to say, "No, Trump, you can't go to war without a vote of Congress," which is constitutionally obvious.
And he said too, and again, just it's funny because everybody's like, "Oh, Massey's it's like
he's not."
Yeah, here Aiden and I are as young Republicans. We're just saying we like somebody within the Republican Party. So
there's a lot of other guys that we like. I mean, we mentioned Victoria Sparks. We've mentioned Marlon Stutzman.
Yes.
Of course, Micah. Our great Attorney General Todd Rokita. I was gonna use a good term, like I was gonna say badass, which I think is true.
I agree.
He brings in the fight. He's not afraid to go down. He's not afraid.
Especially taking on localities that don't comply with state law.
Yeah, East Chicago.
That's one of them.
And Bloomington.
That's another one in Monroe County.
That sheriff, there's just a he's been. I think he backed down finally. Took him long enough.
Which, by the way, speaking of sheriffs, we California, you have Sheriff Chad Bianco, which that guy really has what it takes.
Yes, and the reason we point this out is because he's running for governor of California, and right now, because of that weird, stupid top 2 primary, which I don't like very much, it's a blanket primary. Him and Steve Hilton, 2 Republicans, could advance to the general election. And that would be the race to watch, because along with Paul LePage in the 2nd district, if we do terrible in the midterms, Paul LePage and Chad Bianco.
Jared Golden's a non-issue.
Yeah, Jared Golden's retiring, so we don't have to
That's
worry
right.
about him.
He's a non-issue in Maine's 2nd Congressional District.
So we'll at least get one.
That's right. We'll get one. And that's the other thing, too. So
speaking of Congress, that's another topic.
Yes. So we want to encourage people to go to house.gov and senate.gov, probably to see how they're spending your money in debt. By the way,
the bills are always 5,000 pages long. For reasons.
It's just like 2010. You have to pass it to see what's in it.
As Nancy Pelosi famously said.
Yeah, and they're still doing it.
Yeah, you got to pass it to see what's inside of it.
Well, I say this, ban insider trading. And again,
Todd Young recently came out with his own bill of the, I know Josh Hawley tried to do it with what he called
Missouri
with the Pelosi Act, which
That's
I
right.
support that. And Todd Young's got his own bill, and I hope Hawley will sign on to this one as well. And I say good on both of them for bringing attention to it.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things we wanted to shout out to, because we talk about delegations and everything like that, and so banning that insider trading, but also when you look at the composition of Congress, and again, we need more Thomas. I would say we need more Thomas Masseys and folks like that in, but look at the debt and look at committee. That's one of the things, and we're not going to get too much into it because there's so much debt to cover. But, go to house.gov, go to senate.gov, see what's going on,
And just take
everywhere.
a look at how they're spending your money.
Exactly. Now, there's another current, before we get into our rapid fire and closing introspection, there's another event that's going to be happening here in the United States. And one of the podcast episodes we did several weeks ago, about a month actually, was we talked about, we had written a letter to His Holiness Pope Leo the 14th, and I had had this idea to send a letter, and I said, why don't I have Aiden co-write it?
Constitutional Center in Philadelphia. That's actually where one of the presidential debates happened in 24.
Yes,
how interesting!
How interesting, and we like that one too.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
It is
for reasons.
So
has to do with maybe dogs and cats. I'll leave it at that.
I'll leave it at that too. Again, we're just reporting what's going on. We're not right.
You'll hear
most of the time.
You'll know it's our opinion if it's our opinion.
By the way, I called Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith. We saw him at Congress of the Counties. I said, "You're Indiana's Ron DeSantis," and he started doing clipping the tweets and then posting on Instagram and Facebook and then doing the brackets. I'm like, "Hey, there we go."
Do you want to tell our viewers what Micah thought when you told him that you gave him that nickname?
Oh, he was very happy. But he took it as a compliment. Said, "Hey, look, I appreciate the compliment."
I think it is a compliment. And
it
speaks to how he is. And then, and then I would even say, you look at James Fishback. We mentioned him earlier, but we'll get back to this in just a second. He has what it takes. But back to this real quick. The National Constitution Center. We don't want to go too off topic. We want to kind of be consistent. As Justin mentioned, the National Constitution Center is awarding the Liberty Medal to the first American Pope. That, of course, be Pope Leo the 14th. And I think I don't know if this is something they've ever done before, but I think it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And so on July 3rd, 2026, the eve of the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States, they say that we will award the 38th Annual Liberty Medal to His Holiness Pope Leo the 14th for his lifelong work promoting religious liberty and freedom of conscience and expression around the world, ideas enshrined by America's founders in the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So this actually goes back to history, where we were founded. What they're saying, and of course this goes back to Thomas Jefferson. Look at the founding fathers. They talked about how the Constitution and our foundational documents and principles were for a moral people. They weren't talking about a specific religion.
No, they're talking about any moral person, I would say.
That's right. And you can practice faith not just on Sundays. And I say that as somebody who, we've Ada and I have been talking about our prayer life and things like that. And so that really that goes back to this. And so the 2026 Liberty Medal ceremony, it's going to be held, like we reported, on the eve of the 250th anniversary. Mm-hmm. It's going to be outside. This is, again, from constitutioncenter.org, the National Constitution Center on Independence Mall in Philadelphia. And so Pope Leo XIV intends to deliver live acceptance remarks virtually from the Vatican, which will be live streamed to those in attendance on Independence Mall as well as online via the center's website. So if you can't make it in person, check it out. taking place against the backdrop of the Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution were signed. The ceremony will reflect on the enduring meaning of liberty and a moment of historical national reflection and will underscore Philadelphia's central role in both the nation's founding and its ongoing civic life. The event will bring together civic leaders, faith leaders, and members of the public to consider how America's founding ideals articulated 250 years ago continue to resonate globally.
I think this is, and especially when you consider Pope Leo XIV, of course, being the first American Pope, this really is, in my opinion, is a big deal. A really big deal. And I think it's perfect timing.
Absolutely, it is perfect timing. And here's another fun fact for you about the Liberty Medal. The Liberty Medal, and it was established in 1988 and hosted by the National Constitution Center since 2006, recognizes and celebrates individuals of courage and conviction who strive to secure the blessings of liberty to people around the globe. Now, obviously, it goes without saying, President Ronald Reagan talked about America being that shining city upon a hill. And one of the actual items for Aiden and I as a bucket list together is to go to the Reagan Library.
Yes.
And, we saw the president, back when the presidential primary, this idea came in 2023 and 24 for the 24 cycle for the presidential primary, when we saw the debates there. And why don't you tell
the sun went down, things got real.
They did. But why don't you also tell our listeners, too, kind of the ambiance that it provided, even for those of us like you and I that were watching.
It does show, much of Simi Valley, the backdrop. And I think the Air Force One Pavilion was the perfect place to do it, of course. And, I think about it, similar, it's not the same thing, but we have something called the Arts Garden in Indianapolis, and I think it should be a venue for someone's victory party a few years from now. But I'll leave it at that.
I'll leave it at that, too. But it's a good venue. I mean, it's the same concept with the
Richard
glass.
Murdoch, actually, when he was treasurer, when he ran for Senate, he had his kickoff campaign there. At the Arts Garden.
And that's a very, very interesting fact as well that he had it there. So it has held political events. And, with Pope Leo XIV, since he is here for the Midwest, we'd love to have him here one day. And I think that would be such a special blessing for the Midwest, but really all of America to have him here, to be able to visit for the first time as Pope since his election last year in May of 2025. And, there's a lot of current events. I mean, there's just so many we could get into we could talk for hours on this podcast and just give our opinion and, and talk about what's going on, tell you what our take is politically and otherwise. There's just so many things. And I think the biggest thing is just, just keep an eye on current events. I mean, obviously the gas prices are going up. So, I mean, you're
going to be seeing I did that stickers, but not the ones that you remember.
Yes, not the ones that and you guys.
Trust me, those stickers were those I did that stickers were a classic. I will say that, and they're probably going to be a classic again, depending on who you ask.
Depending on who you ask, that's right. So and I think that's another thing too.
Should we buy some stickers?
Maybe.
Yeah.
We can see if Thomas Massey has some. We'll have to ask him. But I mean, so that is, there's so many current events. We keep an eye on them and really just to see what's going on. I mean, some places the gas prices, you're talking 80, for 87 they're over $4 or they're getting close. So
of course, California with the highest gas price in the country is that, and unfortunately here with the fourth highest gas tax in the country, we're getting it too.
We're getting it too, and it's just yesterday we were when we were walking and got over 6 miles, and I had to get gas, and Aiden told me, because we love carpooling together. That's another thing we like doing.
Yes, we do.
Not just because of the high gas prices, but that that companionship is fun, and to be able to do whatever we need to do. So. But you reminded me yesterday, like, you might as well get it before it goes up another 5 cents and what.
Yes, of course.
So, before we close our podcast, and it looks like you found something too.
Well, let's just say it's a sticker of a certain world leader, and it's not I did that. It says I made him do that. And as to who is on there, I'll leave that up for you guys to figure that out.
We'll leave it up for you guys to figure out.
For you guys to figure that out. We don't want to have to hear certain music, and
That's right. That's right.
You all can figure that out.
You guys can definitely figure that. So before we wrap up, we have some questions that we're going to ask each other as part of that new segment.
Final little lightning round.
That's right, and also you can answer whether in the comments section of our social media or just even amongst whether you're listening with family, friends, community members, out on a walk, whatever it is. So we'll answer these, and then we'll go ahead and just go through them. So, what gives us hope here in our lives together every day? I'll let you go first.
Good question.
The
I would say
complex.
yes, that, but also just knowing about all the just having all the different good people in our lives. I think that
Yes,
helps.
100%. I think that that's really something. Just being surrounded by good folks here. That you can use the term people of goodwill. That that they're out there, and we really appreciate having that. That also represents Hoosier hospitality. I think for me it'd be the same thing. And then of course God has blessed us with many things, and you made the point too that this morning, Aiden. You said that just every day there's something to be thankful for, and all glory to God. You
Absolutely.
said those exact words.
Yes.
So that was awesome. What is the easiest part about accepting autism in ourselves and each other?
That's a good question. I think just knowing that I'm not alone is helpful. I would put.
Same thing. I think knowing that I'm not alone and that Aiden and I are walking this journey together, and that, as part of the community that you just mentioned, that, we have a lot of good people that are a part of this wonderful community. And I think even just learning, we've talked about earlier, like in the accommodations, learning more about each other, but also internally recognizing it. I think that's been a thing. What is the hardest part about accepting autism in ourselves and each other?
I think just you got to learning how to best communicate. How would I put it? How we
Handle
handle
situations.
situations, overcome the odds,
Yes,
things like that.
I would agree. I think, we've given each other, grace and understanding in our best friendship for life, but that also translates to, advocating for others like us that, it's all about understanding. So internally and externally, and I think we've done a really good job, I
Yes.
would say, of doing that, and really just, as you say, as Aiden often tells me, to double down on whatever it is we need and want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, before we close, we've got some fun questions now as part of this segment.
Oh.
And your favorite debate or political line?
Oh, that is such a tough one.
There's so many.
There are so many fun ones.
Mine's the Massey one. I'm going to take that.
Yeah. The voice. Which one? Your voice is cracking.
Well, that, but also mine that I'm coming at you like you've never. The March
that's a fun
27th, 2020.
That's a fun one for sure. That's a tough one. How about Well, there's a few. One of them was when Nikki Haley looked at one of her opponents and said, "I honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say." There's that.
That's a cool one.
When Governor Haley did that. What's another one? Let's think. When a certain guy from New Jersey shouted, "So listen, you want to have the
Chris
conversation
Christie.
later? I'm happy to have it, buddy. But until that time, sit down and shut up."
And we're talking about former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie.
He was well known for telling it like it is.
Yes, he told it like it is.
Town halls.
Yes.
He dealt with a lot of people.
He did. Well, and who could forget, too, like I said, the quote that Aiden just mentioned, that was,
Sit down and shut up.
Well, I could visualize the podium. He used a particular seal. It was so nice.
Yeah, and when he tells you to sit down, and here's a note of advice. If Chris Christie tells you to sit down and shut up, you sit down and shut up.
You better do it, too, especially since the Jersey State Police were there, and as they should, they were ready to deal with somebody. But because that guy was going more than just verbal at that point.
Oh, yeah.
What is the best part about our shared strength of memorizing things?
I think just, the amount of, it's like almost like a limitless amount of it's like there's no limit to how much we got in there.
That's right. The sky's the limit. So now it's time for our take of the week, where there's one issue that we think that.
So do we do
yes.
yours and then I'll do mine?
Well, yeah, we'll give our perspective, and this is something that's exciting. And one issue we think people should be paying attention to. So we'll talk about it, and then we'll like Aiden, like you just said, we'll give our take. So why is advocacy important, and what does it look like for you?
Good question. I think advocacy looks like, people who know that they got to do it. They got a job to do and should do the job, that they go in there and they do it. And I will say that, like I said, I highlight Micah Beckwith, for example. One of the things he did was when you asked him a certain question at a town hall.
When I got shouted down.
When he got booed. And he goes, Hey, look, I'm all for it.
And it's like, I love Florida and Ron DeSantis, and like, no,
Boo!
they were yelling at us, and it's like, great job, Justin, and I'm like just smiling with my thumbs up. It's like, and I had people come up to me that weren't necessarily like, staunch Republicans like us, but I just kept hearing. I heard about autism like several times, and I was like, God planted the seed. I'm like, I got to say something because
I
it's
want
important.
to. And one of the things I want to highlight, because speaking of that, I would say, whether or not I would say this, I'll leave this up. I'll ask you your perspective. When he met with the folks with the group that was advocating for people with disabilities, I think that was advocacy on his part when he was meeting with them, and he talked about, the sort of great things that people with disabilities have to offer.
Yes, that was one of the things,
and I think you commented on that. You commented on that post.
I did, and what we're talking about here is on Facebook, where Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith, the ARC of Indiana, had a advocacy day, and so he was able to go there. And I think that just goes to show you that's what it's all about here when it comes to advocacy. And we really just think it's important to continue that here in Indiana, but also across the nation. So that's a good question. I would elaborate further, because I want to make sure to answer it, of course. I think that for me, and it looks like, seeing stuff like that and sharing it and transmitting, that on social media, but also continuing to double down with this podcast and with our, with our journey together, and just affecting as many people as we can in a positive way.
Absolutely.
That's really what the goal is. Advocacy, we've talked about even, road safety, all these things.
No kill switches.
Yes, no kill switches, and the technology is there without the kill switches. If shouldn't be mandated to get a new car, but if you do, it has some safety features that obviously the driver is 100% legally and morally responsible for the safe operation of the vehicle. But looking at that, or maybe you have like a 4-way stop sign that there's a dim LED, so contacting even like the highway department, whatever agency and jurisdiction is responsible. Hey, I noticed this, and just something like that could have a positive ripple effect. I mean, that goes beyond just autism advocacy, but I always tie it back into to I have that hyper focus. So here I am, and I can look up INDOT or whoever it is I need to, and like, boom, I'm going to have it.
But you find them.
Yes, and when it comes to autism advocacy, I think just continuing to double down, I would just say for people to not be afraid of their journey.
Absolutely, that's another good piece of advice. So I think that's going to do it for this one. So thank you so much for listening to the Neurologic Podcast. Of course, we appreciate you all, and for all those who have listened. And make sure to follow us, of course, on Facebook and on Instagram. And of course, on our Instagram page, we've been seeing, we're growing that one organically as well. And we've already got some good friends that have followed us on there. And we want to, should we give them a shout out?
Sure.
I guess we could give them a shout out. Good friends of ours, of course. A few names I'll point out to you. A good friend of ours, Stuart Ellis. John Schmitz of Indianapolis. Stuart Ellis, his wife Sherry, is Micah Beckwith's chief of staff. A good friend of ours that we met that we got to see at Travis County's Josh Young. Thank you.
Right.
He's a listener of ours. Craig Haggard, Andrew Ireland, and just so much more. And again, our good friend J.W. Mike Sell. Again, thank you guys so much for all those folks and everyone else that has come about as well.
That's right. Thank you so much. I absolutely second what you just said. And so, folks, that's going to do it for us. And, as Aidan mentioned, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook. We have our podcast pages there. And also, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Podbean, and Spotify. So until next weekend, when we get to do this again and get to double down on our podcast, and we're going to be doing this indefinitely for the long haul, God bless each and every one of you. Thank you, Aidan, for the awesome opportunity to record this with you right by my side. It is a lot of fun, and to be able to positively affect all of our listeners from wherever you are. Until next time, take care.